Father, Son and Violin. Chapter 9, The Intellectual, the Flight, the Chaos. 1. Encounter a bosom friend, Jiang Langsha. I fell asleep on the railway and dreamed I fell into an ice hole. I was shivering from the frigid cold until I couldn't shiver more as I had turned into a corpse. I saw someone walking towards me. He looked familiar, resembling my Uncle Din, or my aunt, but when I took a close look, unexpectedly that person was my father. He bundled me with a big quilt, took me home, and put me on my bed. Though I was totally conscious, my body could not move. By then, my younger brother Danhen came towards me with a lighter in his hand. He made a fire with the lighter and started to burn my quilt. I yelled desperately.
"Don't burn my violin, don't."
"I'm not burning your violin."
"I'm just burning some rotten railwood to dry your clothes."
My baby brother's voice had changed to that of a young man. I woke up from my dream to find myself in bed, not alone but together with an unknown young man. I jumped down from the bed with alarm, then realized I was naked, totally, not even wearing underpants. I was soon trembling again.
"They should be dry now. Quickly, put them on, or you'll catch a cold."
The young man pointed to my clothes by the fireplace. I put my clothes on as quickly as I could, took a look around and recognized it as the wooden hut by the rail crossing where a senior rail and fence switchman used to stay. I remembered when I was in primary school I used to pass this place twice a day, from home to school and back. How did an old man become a young man?
"My name is Jiang Langsha. My master told me that from time to time he asked you to buy tofu and vegetables for him. Do you remember?"
That young man introduced himself to me. Langsha. I thought, in English it should be, river sand wave. How can a rail switchman have such a romantic, capitalist, four-olds name? I felt a little amazed. Seeing me more relaxed, he went on.
"Recently I've grown a habit. After supper I always wait for you to play the violin. I can tell you are progressing very fast. When you didn't show up for a week I wondered why, thought you might have moved away. Luckily I heard you again yesterday. But your unusual playing of the song, Home, Home, Sweet Home."
He also knew Home, Home, Sweet Home.
That made me a little worried. But not until I went to switch the rails did I find you were falling asleep on the railway. Very dangerous, you see.
I felt very grateful to him, not only for his saving my life, but also equally if not more importantly, for his appreciation of my violin, which was vital to me, particularly at that moment, under such circumstances. To be with a confidant I surely could, make myself at home.
"Can I have some hot water? And do you have something to eat?"
I asked casually.
"I baked a sweet potato for you. It should be ready by now."
Jiang got off the bed, took out the sweet potato from the fireplace, peeled off part of the skin and passed it to me. The baked sweet potato was truly sweet and hot, so was Jiang and his hospitality. Watching me devour the sweet potato voraciously like a hungry tyke, he looked sympathetic and hesitant, but still asked,
"You've got wounds all over your body. Did your parents do it to you?"
"No."
I immediately denied.
"How could they? My parents love me very much, they would never do things like that."
I couldn't talk more. In China there is a proverb, the ugly domestic affairs can't go outdoors. In English it might be, don't air your dirty laundry in public. Therefore I could say nothing, just chew my sweet potato with ketchup of sour and bitter snivels. After my emotions cooled down a bit, I began to think that I could actually survive by staying here for a couple of days, but my mother couldn't. She must be worried to death over my whereabouts. Imagining my mother quarreling with father, I started to be happy again. Jiang looked tired. He wrapped himself with an army coat and sat on the wooden armchair. After being recharged with hot water and sweet potato, I became energetic again. I felt I should do something to entertain him in return for his kindness. But as soon as I started to talk, like a vehicle with a brake out of order, I couldn't help making stories far away from, or even opposite to the facts. Stories such as, my parents love me the most of all the brothers in the family, they forced me to learn the violin and put all their hope on me to become a dragon, to be rich and famous, bala bala. The alarm clock rang. Jiang suddenly stood up, cut my hot air and said to me,
I have to go switch the rail. I think you are tired too. If you can't go home tonight, you may stay here. Tomorrow, we will have milk, we will have bread.
He imitated the tone of Lenin in the movie, Lenin in 1918, smiling with a sense of humor. Like that, I made Jiang Langsha an acquaintance. Later he became one of the most important figures in my life, influencing my thoughts and impacting my life. Two, I became a devil harming everyone around me. Let me continue my story about staying overnight with Jiang Langsha. When I woke up the next morning, I found myself again in Jiang's little plank bed. Jiang, no longer a stranger but rather a friend, was still sitting on the wooden armchair wrapped in his army overcoat. Army items were the most popular and most common among the civilians during the Cultural Revolution. Just imagine how much money the army made from the civilians. Seeing me come back to the real world, he mixed some herbs with alcohol and daubed it on my wounded spots.
I learned this when I was at the so-called vast world, countryside. I don't believe the drug will perform some kind of miracle or wonder, but surely better than doing nothing.
You also have been one of the educated youths.
Thus the scene of sending off the elder brothers and sisters to the countryside appeared to me again. In the late 60s and early 70s, almost all middle school and high school graduates, the formal Red Guards, were sent to the countryside as so-called educated youth to be re-educated by the peasants.
As a man of my age, who could escape that glory? However, I was unlucky. I stayed only a short period before I managed to come here.
Jiang narrated, with a playful smile from his small narrowing eyes.
Our great leader Chairman Mao teaches us, great achievements can be made in the vast world, while you hide yourself in such a little hut, not bored.
I teased him.
Bored? No, not at all, just the opposite.
Jiang looked rather serious, more serious than needed.
There was nothing I could do in that vast world, but in here, this little hut, I can read numerous books. The world in the books is far more vast than the vast world. It's infinitely vast, endless with no limitations.
Jiang pulled out a book from beneath his bed.
Look, see what this is, David Copperfield, by Dickens.
He passed the book to me with excitement. I, as a boy having grown up under the red flag, had never read a foreign book. I turned the pages randomly to show my politeness and disapprovingly passed it back to him. He did not take the book from my hand, but added,
"This was my favorite book when I was your age. I have gone through it quite a few times. Every time I've read it, I felt I was the little David. Thanks to it, I overcame all my loneliness and sadness."
Seeing me still hesitating, he insisted,
"Take it home and read it. But promise me not to damage it or dirty it, and make sure you return it to me when you finish reading."
In response to his fervency, I just had to turn the pages again, this time, taking a look at some illustrations. I did that for I felt I had to give him some respect, especially when the sweet potato I had in last night was not yet out. Jiang looked at the wounds on my face and hands sympathetically, hesitated for a moment but still suggested,
"How about I take you home? I will try to talk to your parents. We've got 36 minutes until the next rail switching, 35 minutes I mean."
He paused, and then complained with anger,
"What gives them the right to beat a kid like that, just because they are parents?"
Immediately I explained again that my parents were not responsible for my wounds, at least not entirely. I also made up another story that I was just betting with my brother Danson that I could stay outside all by myself without going home for 2 days.
"Right, I see, and understand."
He imitated a tone of someone from a movie, as he did before when showing that he was saying one thing but meaning another. I went on staying with Jiang as it happened to be Sunday and I had no school. At lunchtime, he let me share some food from his lunchbox. After lunch, he joked seriously,
"You have had my food, you should work for me too. As the book says, there's no such thing as a free lunch."
After that announcement, he went out to pull the rail fence down at the road crossing. After the train passed, I gave him a hand pulling the fence up. To my surprise, the fence was much heavier than I thought. Close to 3 p.m., I stood by the road crossing, stretching my neck like a duck, expecting my family to pass. I remembered the whole family planned to go see a movie at 4 p.m., a movie with the only film star in Chinese cinema at that time, the Prince In Out from Cambodia. Half an hour later, my family showed up. The little lion, my younger brother Danhan, was the vanguard, followed by my parents, then at the tail, my brother Danson. I waved a little yellow rail flag to draw their attention but failed. The little lion thoughtlessly looked at me like an unknown distant star in the universe. They were followed by the parents, whom also showed little concern, as if I were someone else's dog or cat. This led me to believe that they had agreed to have the same attitude towards me before they went out. I was so anxious that I yelled out, almost yelled out I mean. Meanwhile, my wisdom prompted me to pull down the rail fence, blocking my brother Danson. He stopped, staring down at his toes. Seeing that, the little lion retreated. He bent down to get through the fence and dragged his oldest brother, "Come on, let's go, or we'll be late for the movie." Seeing two sons were on the other side of the fence, mother also stopped. Father walked forward a few more steps, realizing he had lost his function as the family locomotive, and turned his head around. Instantly a kind of joy, a joy of victory and hope emerged in me. Hence I made a decision, make sure they do not see the movie. Until then, Jiang had not noticed I put the fence down by myself. He rushed out with an ugly face to scold me for taking work as play and quickly pulled the fence up. Then he noticed that he was surrounded by my family. His ugly face suddenly turned much friendlier. My mother stared at him inquiringly and questioned,
"Who are you? What are you? What's the relation between you and my son?"
Jiang Langsha immediately introduced himself, including, although not old enough yet to be a leading class, working class was regarded to be the leading class at that era, surely not an anti-revolutionary. Seeing father approaching him, Jiang added,
"I'm an old friend of your son. It was me who invited him to stay overnight. It's not his fault. I'm sorry to have caused your worry. I sincerely apologize."
Father intentionally avoided eye contact with Jiang. Very impatiently, he urged mother to go to the cinema. Mother looked troubled and her eyes turned red, however unwillingly she followed father and walked away. My father's attitude toward me must have enraged Jiang. He suddenly raised his voice shouting,
Just because you are parents you can abuse your child like that?
Those words were like an electric shock to my mom. She turned back and rushed in front of Jiang.
Who abused him? Let's make it clear.
Again father pressed mother.
It's not worth wasting our time here. Watching the movie is the main issue today. Let's go.
Sorry, you don't abuse your son, only consider him less important than a movie.
Though Jiang used sarcastic language to keep a sense of humor, his seriously congested facial expression revealed his agitation and anger. Obviously, Jiang's sarcasm incited mother a great deal. She neglected father's pullback, stepped closer toward Jiang and argued.
How do you know I take my son as less important than a movie? Who has been feeding him and raising him every day up until now? How much do you know of my family affairs? Today, I may as well forget the movie. Let's talk until it becomes absolutely clear.
Hearing mother say, forget the movie, a joyous victory flooded my mind. Now is the time to please mom by turning my spear on Jiang. I roared at him.
How dare you talk to my mom like that? Who invited you into my family business? You stop sticking your nose in other people's affairs like dog bites rat.
Turning my weapon around, ingratiated mom a little but not father, not a bit. He made his last effort to hasten mom to get going with him to the cinema but failed. He walked away all by himself. My baby brother followed father at a distance and frequently turned his head back toward us. I dared not check Jiang's reaction towards my abnormal attitude of biting the hand that feeds me. Thank God at that moment a train was drawing near. Jiang pulled down the road crossing fence with mother and Danson on the other side. Through the successive clearance between moving carriages, I saw the silhouettes of mother and Danson get smaller and smaller as they moved toward home. Combined with the rhythm of the train will rumble, my heart palpitated intensely, bang bang, bang bang, bang bang. After the train was gone, I thoughtfully offered my help to pull the fence up. Soon after, I apologized for the crude and reckless words just spit from my mouth and expressed that for atonement, I was willing to work there for 2 days for nothing except rice and bed. Jiang paid little attention to what I was saying as he was in a state of profound thinking.
Your parents too are intellectuals. How can they also?
He breathed, bewildered. Like that I stayed with Jiang for 2 more days. Little by little he told me about himself. Jiang Langsha was from an intellectual family. In the year 1957, his father was given one of the right-wing headgears. The same as all the other million right wings, his father was sent to be transformed far away from home. Immediately, the mother had to draw a distinct boundary between herself and the right-wing husband by divorcing him and throwing herself into a working class's embrace. After the family's reorganization, Jiang Langsha suffered much maltreatment from the new family man, to put it into clear words, frequently suffering from beatings. When family contradiction rose to a non-reconciliatory level, Jiang, as an elementary pupil, had to give up the family, or more correctly, leave his mother. Through the introduction of his school teacher, he was adopted by a working-class family, a family with only a daughter, that wanted a son very badly. Jiang had not seen his parents since. When he was a high school freshman, the Cultural Revolution started. He stayed inside and immersed himself passionately in his book world, without taking part in any revolutionary activities until he was sent to the countryside as an educated youth. After a short while he found it to be a pure waste of time and life, so he made excuses to return back to the city. Somehow he got himself acquainted with the former master of the little hut, the one I used to know, and replaced him in the job. Afterwards I discovered Jiang had concealed a portion of the facts, which I will explain in later chapters. His story made me understand why he yelled so furiously at my parents for their ill treatment of me, as he too used to be a severely abused child. In a way, we were two bitter gourds on the same cane. Jiang also told me his father was a writer, and his dream was to follow in his father's footsteps and become a writer. Very confidently he said,
"The most important book I want to write in my life is My Father, because I'm very proud of him."
Jiang's small narrowing eyes shined when he said that. Jiang's words shook my heart, and also aroused a kind of jealousy. Yes, how wonderful if one has a father that he can be proud of, even though that father may not be a Communist Party member but a right-wing. 2 days later, father went back to his May 7th cadre school. I, as a little bird with immature wings, returned to the nest. Another few days had passed. Gradually my wounds were recovering. But, just when everything seemed to go back to normal, another mishap started in school. I got Teacher Lau in trouble. Before I go on about Teacher Lau, I have to tell a little story about our Mao team. As I described in earlier chapters, the school and the Mao team were governed by factory workers. The one in charge of our Mao team was Representative Chuang. Though Teacher Lau made every effort, they could not get along well. There were just too many disagreements on too many fronts. Teacher Lau compromised as much as he could regarding all issues except one: Chuang trying to abuse our team girls sexually. One day after rehearsal, Representative Chuang ordered Liu Xiaobing to go to his office, alone, to have a heart-to-heart talk. Teacher Lau knew exactly what was going to happen, therefore, as soon as Liu went into Chuang's office, he told me that Liu wanted me to look after her school bag and of course Liu's whereabouts. It had been a long time since I had the chance to look after Liu's school bag. I was so delighted that I rushed to Representative Chuang's office. I didn't bother to knock on the door but pushed straight in. Yet the door was locked from inside. I shouted,
"Liu Xiaobing, I'm here. Pass your school bag to me."
A few seconds later the door opened. Liu looked uneasy with red face and eyes. Liu avoided eye contact and quickly ran away. I was completely puzzled as Representative Chuang shouted at me with great fury.
"Who asked you to come here?"
I was such a naive boy that I answered this unnecessary to answer question.
"Teacher Lau asked me to come here to take teammate Liu's school bag."
That was it. Teacher Lau was in trouble for sure, it was only a matter of when. Liu Xiaobing left the Mao team suddenly, just like a few of our other former female teammates. It was just a few days after my father had gone to the school with the music records I got from Teacher Lau, more precisely from his cultural trash. Lau called me to his home. He closed the window, put a mute on my violin, and then asked me to play the ballada by the Romanian composer Ciprian Porumbescu, repeatedly. I stopped playing when I noticed Lau's eyes were turning red. After a moment of dead silence, Lau started to tell me a story about Cyprian Porambescu. He then said,
"If someone has no forethought, he must have immediate worries. You are a young man full of talent, passion, and ambition. Therefore, I hope you will always think about the future and not entangle your time and energy in those everyday trifles."
Teacher Lau, if you have no other more important things to talk about, I'll have to go home. Today it's my turn to cook, one of the everyday trifles. If I'm late for cooking, I will surely be scolded again.
Just as I got out of Teacher Lau's door, I bumped into his wife. I greeted her as usual, but she did not greet back as usual, worse than usual, much worse. I would never have thought that that was the goodbye moment between me and dear Teacher Lau. The truth was, after my father went to talk to the school authority, he handed a record of Beethoven's No. 9 Symphony to the workers' team. One of the workers played the record on the school phonograph, and the whole school was amused by that powerful chorus. The worker was very much amused too and said, "Good sound," until my father stopped him and explained how serious the matter was. It must have taken father quite some time and effort before the workers understood what they were dealing with. That certainly gave Representative Chuang an excellent excuse for revenge on Teacher Lau for what Lau did to him. Lau's home was immediately searched. Thanks to my father's knowledge and instruction, the working class team found all the cultural trash, the Western classical music tapes and records. Teacher Lau was sent to a countryside village school as punishment for his wrongdoing. Even today, when I recall that matter, I feel grief in my heart. Teacher Lau was not the only one dragged into the trouble caused by my father. Ma Xiaomao's home was also searched. As Ma's father was a so-called reactionary academic authority intellectual, her home had been searched several times before, therefore nothing significant was found, except the violin method Homan. But something much worse happened when one of the workers dropped Ma's violin on the ground while conducting his search, not intentionally, he claimed as he excused himself. The violin had a few cracks on the top, and the neck fell off of the body. Ma narrated her calamity with tears. I immediately took her to see Master Zhou, the one who taught me how to make my first violin. Surprisingly, the good and warm-hearted Master Zhou rejected my knocking at his door. On our way back, Zhou's daughter chased up behind and handed me a piece of pigskin hide glue, a special glue for making and repairing the violin. She told us that her father was strongly warned by the school workers' team, though as a worker himself, his home was spared a search. Zhou's daughter's story scared us. We rushed to the church to see whether Teacher Li was okay. Thank God Li remained untouched. What a relief. I was really relieved I had not exposed anything about Teacher Li to my father. I used all of my knowledge and craftsmanship learned from Master Zhou to glue Ma's violin head and my violin body, the one my aunt bought for me at the May 1st cultural store, together, so that Ma would have a violin to play for the time being. Without Teacher Lau, the school Mao team became a group of vapidity. After Lu Xiaobing left, Wang Shi also left, so we both quit the Mao team and concentrated on home practice. Thanks to my father, calamity fell upon my teachers, schoolmates, and friends. This turned my love for him to hatred and a steadily growing desire for revenge. During that period, I often had nightmares. If it was not the sky falling down, it was someone chasing me trying to kill me. Each and every time it came to that crucial moment, I could hear others calling, "Mama," yet I had no one to call for help. At that point I became clearly aware that I, as one of the communist products, who wanted to be a human individual, different from the party-molded pattern, stood there all on my own. I had no communist party to rely upon, nor the party member parents who manufactured me. No matter what happens to me, obstacles encountered, adversity faced or difficulties to overcome, the one and only person in the whole world I could rely upon was I, me and myself. This fact left me with no choice but to fight my own way out, studying and working hard to make myself strong enough to change my living conditions. My better, happier life as an individual rather than a product, in the future, would be the best proof of my correctness in the lifestyle I chose to live.